Years after Joe Biden ousted a corrupt Ukrainian prosecutor, he was still touting his accomplishment.
I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired.
As Vice President Biden threatened to withhold $1 billion in U.S. aid if the country refused to oust its top prosecutor. By 2015, the Obama administration, the International Monetary Fund, and other Western leaders had grown frustrated that the prosecutor, Viktor Shokin, failed to crack down on corruption in Ukraine. After Biden's ultimatum, Shokin was removed in 2016. But this is what has President Trump and allies like Rudy Giuliani all riled up. At the same time that Biden was cracking down on that Ukrainian prosecutor,
Be back in Ukraine.
his son, Hunter Biden, was serving on the board of Burisma Holdings, a Ukrainian natural gas company. Trump's allies claim Biden wanted that Ukrainian prosecutor out because his son's company, Burisma, was under investigation.
I found out this incredible story about Joe Biden, that he bribed the president of the Ukraine in order to fire a prosecutor who was investigating his son. That is an astounding scandal.
For a time, Burisma was under investigation, but at least one former official in the prosecutor's office said the investigation into Burisma had already been shelved by the time Biden threatened to withhold U.S. aid. And there's no evidence that either Joe Biden or Hunter Biden did anything wrong, even if the optics aren't that great.
There's not been one scintilla of evidence that my son ever interfered, that I ever asked me anything, that I ever got involved in anything other than doing the job I was supposed to do, or that he ever contacted anybody in the American government to do anything. And so I'm proud of him. I just think it's the way these guys play.
Hunter Biden told the New York Times earlier this year he never discussed company business or his decision to join the board with his father. He added, "I have had no role whatsoever in relation to any investigation of Burisma or any of its officers." Hunter Biden also said he left Burisma's board earlier this year, deciding to part ways with the company in a political season where my qualifications and work are being attacked by Rudy Giuliani and his minions for transparent political purposes. Of course, that hasn't stopped Giuliani from digging for dirt.
It's a case that is crying out to be investigated.
Earlier this year, Giuliani planned, then canceled a trip to Ukraine to press officials about Biden-related investigations. He later met with a representative for Ukraine's president to discuss Biden. Meanwhile, Ukrainian Prosecutor General Yuri Lutsenko said in an interview in May that he had no proof Joe Biden or his son did anything wrong. An entity connected to Hunter Biden made millions from its work with Burisma. But from my point of view, a board member can be paid whatever a company decides. They didn't violate any Ukrainian laws, Lutsenko said. Whether Burisma's board members violated U.S. law is not for me to judge. Sarah Murray, CNN, Washington.
What do we know of that July 25 phone call?
Well, what we know is that he was speaking with the leader of Ukraine and that he was pressuring the newly installed president of Ukraine repeatedly, apparently, to dig into this investigation of this company that Hunter Biden had been a board member for. There's a lot that we don't know about this conversation, and also I want to emphasize that the whistleblower who appears to have come forward to raise concerns about that conversation appears to have also assembled other information along with that as part of a broader kind of case of concern that came to the Inspector General of the intelligence community.
Do we know how the whistleblower became aware of, I understand you're saying there's more to it than just the phone call, but I'll just stay on the phone call for a moment. Do we know how the whistleblower is knowledgeable about that call?
Well, this is a person who works in the intelligence community, who had been assigned to a job at the National Security Council at the White House, and who is, as we understand it, no longer in that position. So there are several ways by which this person would have access to that kind of information. When presidents speak to foreign leaders, his staff routinely listens and puts together memos, summaries, or even transcripts of those calls so that other people in important government positions will know what happened and know what policy implications they need to follow through on. So that's one way. And of course, you know, in the intelligence community does not spy on the U.S. president, does not listen to his calls, but tracks the conversations of other world leaders and probably pays very close attention to their reactions or their discussions after speaking with the president. So there are multiple ways a person in this area would come into knowledge of what a president said to the leader of Ukraine.
A Post story on which you share the byline says this, and I'll put it up on the screen. One source familiar with the contents of the phone call said that Trump did not raise the issue of American military and intelligence aid that the administration was at the time withholding from Ukraine, indicating that there may not have been an explicit quid pro quo expressed in that conversation. Do you have any information as to whether there was a quid pro quo expressed in any other direct communication from the president?
We don't know whether, you know, that's an important question, and there is much that we don't know about that. We believe that Trump was directing or encouraging the president of Ukraine to follow through with his legal and cooperate with his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, who has been handling this in a much more explicit way. So, I mean, the signaling around this and the sequence of events surrounding this call, I think, would have been very clear to the president of Ukraine. The president of the United States is on the phone with me. He will not let go of the idea that he wants an investigation. These guys are sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars in aid that we want. They are holding back the chance for me to meet with the president of the United States. You know, what would you make of that set of circumstances if you were listening to Trump?
I understand that implication. I just am trying to also get straight in my mind as to whether there's a smoking gun somewhere, whether there's going to be a direct communication from the president, and it doesn't sound like that's the case.
Well, I think that we have, as we said in our story, we have one source on this call who said that Trump did not explicitly raise the aid. In other words, there was no explicit, as we put it, quid pro quo. But I think if you read that sentence carefully, it's emphasized that that was true in this call. So whether there is that sort of pressure being applied elsewhere or through other means is something we're trying to figure out.